The syringe caught the fluorescent light like a promise of oblivion, and Andy Markson, underpaid, overlooked, and exhausted, had exactly 3 seconds to decide if saving his billionaire boss was worth losing everything he'd spent 7 years protecting. Andy Markson had perfected the art of being furniture. Not the expensive kind that Clara Perry collected in her penthouse, those Italian leather chairs that cost more than his annual salary, but the practical sort. A desk lamp. A filing cabinet. Useful when needed, forgetting the moment the task was done. He stood in the Wellington Grand's coat check room, his phone buzzing with Sophie's bedtime text, "Daddy, when are you coming home? Mrs. Chen says I can stay up till 9 if you say okay." His thumb hovered over the reply. It was already 8:47 p.m., and the celebration showed no signs of winding down. The $2.3 billion merger Clara had closed that afternoon deserved its parade, apparently, even if that parade meant Andy wouldn't make it home before his daughter's eyes drooped shut over her math homework. "Tell Mrs. Chen 8:45 was bedtime," he typed back, adding a heart emoji because guilt made him generous with pixels. "Love you, sophomore dream about dinosaurs." Through the ballroom's French doors, crystal chandeliers cast Manhattan's elite in flattering amber light, softening the sharp edges of their ambition. Andy could see Clara holding court near the champagne fountain, her silk dress the color of old money, her laugh calculated to carry just far enough. She'd removed her shoes an hour ago, a tell he'd learned to recognize. When Clara Perry kicked off her Louboutins, she was either about to fire someone or make a spectacularly bad decision. Tonight, watching her drain her 7th glass of Veuve Clicquot while Marcus Vance circled like a corporate vulture in a Tom Ford suit, Andy suspected it might be both. "You're staring, Markson." Trevor Chen, head of security, materialized beside him with the supernatural timing of someone paid to notice things. "The boss looks like she's having fun." "Boss looks like she's going to regret the morning," Andy corrected, watching Vance's hand migrate from Clara's shoulder blade to the small of her back. The movement was smooth, practiced, the kind of thing that happened in rooms where people measured worth in zeros and consent in proximity. Trevor grunted. "Not our circus. We just work here." But Andy had never been good at minding his own business, a character flaw his ex-wife had cited somewhere between emotionally unavailable and prioritizes strangers over family in the divorce papers. He watched Clara stumble slightly, her composure cracking like expensive porcelain. Vance steadied her, whispering something that made her laugh, the wrong kind of laugh, too loud, too loose. "I'm taking a walk," Andy announced, already moving. "Your shift ends at 9, Trevor called after him, but Andy was already pushing through the ballroom side exit, following the click of designer heels on marble and the lower rumble of a man who'd mistaken a drunk woman for opportunity. The parking garage smelled like concrete and privilege, luxury cars lined up like trophies. Andy's sneakers squeaked against the polished floor as he descended to level P2, his heart rate climbing with each step. He wasn't a hero. Heroes got raises and recognition. He was just a 31-year-old logistics coordinator who couldn't afford his own parking spot, chasing after a woman who probably didn't know his daughter's name despite the framed photo on his desk. But Sophie had asked him once, when she was 5 and still believed daddies could fix anything, "If someone's in trouble, do you help them even if they're mean to you?" He'd said yes because that's what good fathers said. Now, rounding the corner by Clara's Bentley, watching Vance press her against the driver's door while his free hand produced a syringe that caught the fluorescent light like a promise of oblivion, Andy discovered he'd meant it. "Mr. Vance," he called out, his voice steadier than his hands. "Ms. Perry's car service is waiting upstairs." Marcus Vance didn't even have the decency to look startled. He turned with the casual arrogance of a man who'd never faced consequences, the syringe disappearing into his jacket pocket with practiced efficiency. His smile was all teeth and no warmth, the kind hedge fund managers wore when explaining why your retirement fund had mysteriously evaporated. "Markson, isn't it?" Vance's tone suggested he was naming a particularly unremarkable piece of office equipment. "The logistics guy. Didn't realize coat check duties extended to the parking garage." Clara lifted her head from where it had been resting against the Bentley's window, her eyes struggling to focus. When they finally landed on Andy, something flickered across her face: recognition, maybe embarrassment, definitely confusion about why the man who ordered her sparkling water was interrupting her evening. "Andy." Her voice was silk dragged through gravel. "What are you?" "I'm fine. Marcus is we're just talking." "Ms. Perry needs to get home," Andy said, not moving from his position 10 feet away. He was cataloging exits, distances, the weight of his phone in his pocket. Trevor was probably still upstairs. Security cameras covered this section, but who reviewed footage of a billionaire leaving her own party? "Her driver's been waiting for 20 minutes. "I don't have a driver tonight," Clara said, pushing away from the car and immediately regretting it as the garage tilted sideways. Vance caught her elbow, his grip just slightly too firm. "Marcus offered, he said he'd." "I said I'd make sure she got home safely," Vance finished, his free hand drifting back toward his pocket. "We're old friends. Isn't that right, Clara?" Andy watched Clara's face, saw the moment she tried to access the part of her brain that made billion-dollar decisions and came up empty. Whatever Vance had slipped into her drinks earlier was working exactly as intended. In about 15 minutes, she'd be compliant. At 30, she might not remember her own name. "Mr. Vance, I'm going to need you to step away from Ms. Perry." Andy pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over Trevor's contact. "Now." The temperature in the garage dropped 10 degrees. Vance's smile transformed into something reptilian, his hand emerging from his pocket, not with the syringe, but with a money clip that could have fed Sophie for 6 months. "You know what I respect about you working-class types? You've got principles." He peeled off 500s, let them flutter to the concrete between them like confetti at a funeral. "Very admirable. Very quaint. Here's what's going to happen, Markson. You're going to pick up that money, go back upstairs, and forget you took this little walk. Clara and I have business to discuss. You know what I respect about you working-class types? You've got principles." He peeled off 500s, let them flutter to the concrete between them like confetti at a funeral. "Very admirable. Very quaint. Here's what's going to happen, Markson. You're going to pick up that money, go back upstairs, and forget you took this little walk. Clara and I have business to discuss. The kind of business that requires roofies." Andy's voice was quiet, deadly. "Because I saw what you put back in your pocket, and it wasn't breath mints." Clara's eyes widened, some survival instinct piercing through the chemical fog. "Marcus, what's he, what are you?" "He's confused," Vance said smoothly, his hand now openly reaching for the syringe. "You've had a long night, darling. Let's get you somewhere you can rest." Andy moved. Not toward Vance, he wasn't stupid enough to fight a man with 40 pounds on him, but toward Clara, inserting himself between them with the kind of reckless courage that came from years of choosing Sophie's safety over his own comfort. "Ms. Perry, I need you to walk toward me. Right now." For a moment, the garage held its breath. Then Clara, operating on some deep instinct that even alcohol couldn't drown, took one shaky step toward Andy. Then another. Vance's composure cracked. "You're making a serious mistake, Markson. Do you have any idea who I am? I could buy and sell you 100 times over. I could make one phone call and you'd be unemployable in this entire city." "Probably," Andy agreed, his hand finding Clara's wrist, steadying her as she swayed. "But right now, you're a guy who brought a syringe to a party, and I'm the guy with security on speed dial. So here's what's actually going to happen. You're going to leave. We're going to forget this whole thing happened. And if I ever see you within 50 feet of Ms. Perry again, I'm going to email every business reporter in Manhattan about tonight's almost headline." Vance's face went purple, his hands clenching into fists. For a heartbeat, Andy thought he might actually swing. Then the calculation happened, the risk assessment that made men like Vance successful. Fighting nobody in a parking garage wasn't worth the security footage. "This isn't over," Vance hissed, already backing toward the elevator. You just signed your termination papers, you self-righteous Marcus. Clara's voice cut through the garage like a boardroom gavel, suddenly sharper despite her compromised state. Some muscle memory of command. Leave. Now. He left. The elevator doors closed on his fury, and Andy was suddenly alone with his drunk boss in a parking garage at 9:15 p.m., his phone buzzing with another text from Sophie, "Daddy, I can't sleep. Can you sing the dinosaur song when you get home?" Clara looked at him, really looked, maybe for the first time in 3 years, and her carefully constructed composure shattered. "I'm going to be sick." She was. Expensive champagne and catered hors d'oeuvres splattered across concrete that probably cost more per square foot than Andy's apartment. He held her hair back, this woman who signed his paychecks, who'd never once asked about the framed photo on his desk, who was currently emptying her stomach in a parking garage because Andy couldn't mind his own business. When she finished, Clara Perry, Forbes' Ice Queen of Innovation, Manhattan's most untouchable, looked up at him with mascara-streaked cheeks and said 4 words that would crack both their lives wide open. "Please don't leave me." Getting a drunk billionaire into a Bentley should have been simpler. Clara kept trying to remove her other shoe, the one she'd somehow kept on, insisting with slurred conviction that asymmetry is for architecture, not footwear. Andy had to guide her into the passenger seat like a child, her designer bag spilling its contents across the leather, lipstick, breath mints, 3 different phones, and a crumpled photo of a little girl who couldn't have been more than 5. Andy stared at the photo for a moment too long. Clara snatched it back with surprising speed, clutching it to her chest. "That's private," she mumbled, suddenly protective. "You don't, nobody gets to." "I wasn't looking," Andy lied gently, closing her bag and setting it on her lap. He'd seen enough, though. The girl had Clara's eyes, her determined chin. And she was conspicuously absent from every conversation, every public appearance, every carefully curated detail of Clara Perry's billion-dollar life. The Bentley's keys were in the ignition, because when you're rich enough, you don't worry about car theft in private garages. Andy slid into the driver's seat, the leather still warm from where Vance had probably been planning to sit. His hands gripped the steering wheel, and for a moment, he just sat there, calculating. He should call Trevor. Hand this off to someone whose job description actually included rescue inebriated executives from predatory hedge fund managers. He should go home to Sophie, who was probably still awake despite Mrs. Chen's best efforts, waiting for her father to sing that ridiculous dinosaur song he'd made up when she was 3. Instead, he started the engine. The Bentley purred like it cost more than his student loans, which it absolutely did. "Where do you live, Ms. Perry?" Clara had her forehead pressed against the window, watching the parking garage spiral past in concrete loops. "The Apex. West 57th, penthouse." She laughed, bitter and raw. "Where else would the Ice Queen live?" "Top floor. Can't let anyone get above you." "Not ever." The drive through Manhattan was surreal. Andy had spent 3 years coordinating Clara's logistics but had never actually driven her anywhere. She usually had professionals for that, people with proper licenses and NDAs and salaries that didn't require overtime calculations. Now here he was, navigating her $250,000 car through late-night traffic while she oscillated between silence and fragments of sentences that felt like secrets escaping. "You have a daughter," she said suddenly, not quite a question. Andy glanced over, surprised. "Sophie. She's 7. The framed photo. On your desk. I've seen it." Clara's voice was thick, fighting through whatever Vance had given her. "She has your smile. That's good. Children should look like their parents. Should know who they belong to." There was something haunting in how she said it, something that made Andy think of the crumpled photo in her bag. But before he could respond, Clara's phone buzzed. Then buzzed again. And again. All 3 phones started going off like a symphony of obligation. "You can ignore those," Clara muttered, but Andy saw the screen of the one that had fallen to the floor. Urgent, Tokyo needs approval. Singapore deal closing in 4 hours. Where are you? Ms. Perry, do you need to? I need to not exist for one goddamn night. Her hand slammed against the dashboard, surprising both of them with its force. Is that allowed? Can the Ice Queen take one night off from being an empire, or does the whole thing collapse if I'm not? Her voice cracked. I'm so tired, Andy. It was the first time she'd used his name. Actually used it, not as a summons but as an acknowledgement that he was a person who existed beyond his function. The apex rose from West 57th like a glass monument to excess. The doorman's eyes widened when Andy pulled up in Clara's Bentley, then widened further when he saw Clara in the passenger seat, shoes off, makeup destroyed, looking nothing like the woman whose portrait hung in the building's lobby. Ms. Perry, the doorman began, already reaching for his phone, probably to call building security, or worse, the tabloids. She's fine, Andy said, coming around to help Clara out. Just tired. Long night. Clara leaned heavily against him, and Andy became acutely aware that he was touching his boss. That her silk dress was slipping off one shoulder. That every second of this could be misinterpreted, weaponized, career-ending. Raymond, Clara said to the doorman, summoning some reserve of authority. Mr. Markson is, he's helping me. Private. Understood? Raymond understood what his paycheck required him to understand. He nodded, stepping back to hold the door. The elevator to the penthouse required a key card and a fingerprint. Clara fumbled with both, her hands shaking. When the doors finally opened directly into her apartment, Andy stepped into a world that made the Bentley look modest. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Art that probably had its own insurance policies. Furniture so minimalist it looked like no one actually lived here, which, Andy realized, looking at the untouched kitchen and the single coffee mug in the sink, was probably accurate. You should drink water, Andy said, because that's what you said to drunk people, even when those drunk people owned penthouses that could house 20 families. Clara had collapsed onto a white sofa that probably cost more than Sophie's entire college fund would. She was staring at the ceiling, tears sliding down her temples. Her name was Naomi. The words came out strangled. My daughter. Is. Her name is Naomi. Andy froze in the kitchen, water glass halfway to the sink. She's 6 now. Almost 7. Clara's voice was hollow, echoing in the cavernous space. I haven't seen her in 4 years. Her father, my ex, he has full custody. Said I chose my empire over my family. Said I was too cold, too ambitious, too. She laughed, sharp and wounded. He wasn't wrong. Andy brought the water, set it on the glass coffee table, and did something he'd never done in 3 years of employment. He sat down. Not across from her, maintaining professional distance, but on the edge of the sofa, close enough that his presence said I'm listening. The merger today, Clara continued, staring at the photo she'd pulled from her bag. It was Naomi's birthday. She turned 7. And I closed a $2.3 billion deal instead of being her mother, Andy finished quietly. Clara's sob was raw, primal, the sound of something breaking that had been holding itself together for far too long. I don't even know if she remembers me. 4 years. She was 3 when he took her. What kind of monster chooses board meetings over bedtime stories? Andy thought about Sophie's text, still unanswered on his phone. About the dinosaur song he wouldn't sing tonight. About every school play he'd missed, every parent-teacher conference he'd rescheduled, every moment he'd sacrificed to keep his job so he could afford to be Sophie's father. The kind who's terrified of failing at both, he said. So you pick the one you're good at. Clara turned to look at him then, really look, and Andy saw something shift behind her eyes, recognition, maybe, that the furniture had feelings. You get it, she whispered. I get it, he confirmed. Doesn't make it right. But I get it. Outside, Manhattan glittered like broken promises. Inside, Clara Perry finally stopped performing, and Andy Markson finally stopped being invisible. And somewhere in that moment, neither of them noticed they'd crossed a line that would make everything that came next inevitable. Andy woke to sunlight stabbing through floor-to-ceiling windows and the disorienting realization that he'd fallen asleep on a sofa worth more than his car. His neck screamed in protest, his shirt was wrinkled beyond redemption, and his phone was vibrating with the fury of 17 missed calls. Sophie. Mrs. Chen. Trevor. Sophie again. His ex-wife, Jennifer. Sophie 3 more times. Oh God, he muttered, fumbling for the phone. The time read 7:47 a.m. He'd promised Sophie he'd take her to school this morning, their Tuesday tradition since the divorce. Instead, he'd spent the night in his billionaire boss's penthouse like some kind of corporate Cinderella who'd missed his own curfew. He called Sophie first. She answered on the first ring. "Daddy, where are you?" Her voice was small, worried in a way that made Andy's chest physically hurt. "Mrs. Chen said you never came home. She made me breakfast, but it's not the same because you always put the blueberries in a smiley face and she just put them on the side like they're regular food. Baby, I'm so sorry." Andy stood, pacing toward the windows, away from where Clara was still asleep on the adjacent sofa, curled around that photograph of Naomi. Something happened at work. An emergency. But I'm coming right now, okay? I'll be there in 20 minutes. It's already 7:48, Daddy. School starts at 8:15. You can't make it in 20 minutes from work, that's impossible, you always say traffic is. Then I'll be there at 8:30 and I'll explain to Mrs. Rodriguez why you're late. He was already grabbing his jacket, checking for his wallet. I promise, sophomore daddy promises. A pause. Then, in that devastating way 7-year-olds had to cut straight to the truth, you promised last time too. The call ended. Andy stood there, phone pressed to his ear, listening to dead air and the sound of his own failures. You should go. He turned. Clara was awake, sitting up, looking like a different species of human than the woman who'd vomited in the parking garage. Her hair was still a disaster, her makeup still streaked, but her eyes were clear. Painfully, soberly clear. Ms. Perry, Clara. She stood, wrapping her arms around herself. In the morning light, without the armor of her usual polish, she looked younger. Vulnerable. After last night, I think we're past Ms. Perry. Andy nodded, unsure what protocol existed for this situation. The corporate handbook for when you see your boss have a complete emotional breakdown probably didn't exist, and if it did, it definitely didn't cover the part where you fell asleep on her furniture. Your daughter needs you, Clara continued, moving toward the kitchen with the careful precision of someone nursing a serious hangover. Go. We'll talk about last night later. Clara. He used her name carefully, testing it. What Vance tried to do, that needs to be reported. Security footage, police report, something. And what exactly will I report? She was making coffee with the kind of focus people use to avoid eye contact. That a colleague offered me a ride home. That I got drunk at my own party. That my employee made accusations about medication he can't prove existed. I know what I saw. And I know what a scandal looks like. The coffee machine hissed like her words. Vance has lawyers who specialize in making problems disappear. I have a company with 10,000 employees whose jobs depend on my reputation staying bulletproof. The math isn't complicated. Andy felt something cold settle in his stomach. So you're just going to let him? I'm going to be smarter. Clara turned, meeting his eyes. No more public drinking. No more letting my guard down. No more. She gestured between them, at the intimacy of morning light and shared confessions. Whatever this was. This was me keeping you from being assaulted. This was you seeing me weak. Her voice cracked on the last word. And that's worse than anything Vance could have done, because now you know. You know about Naomi. You know I'm not actually made of ice. You know that the great Clara Perry gets drunk and cries and needs rescuing like some human being. Andy moved closer, anger overriding caution. Yeah. Imagine that. The billionaire boss is actually a person. They stared at each other across the pristine kitchen, two people who'd accidentally witnessed each other's humanity and weren't sure how to walk it back. Clara's phone shattered the moment, all three of them, a cascade of urgency. She glanced at the screens and something shifted in her posture, the armor sliding back into place like a second skin. Tokyo's waiting. Singapore's furious. The merger documentation needs my signature in 45 minutes or the whole thing collapses. She looked at Andy, and for just a second, he saw the woman from last night, lost, lonely, desperate. Then she blinked, and the Ice Queen returned. Thank you for your help last night, Mr. Markson. It won't be forgotten. But right now, we both have responsibilities we've neglected. The Mr. Markson landed like a slap. They were back to employer and employee, to the proper distance, to the fiction that last night hadn't cracked something open between them. Right, Andy said quietly. Of course. He was halfway to the elevator when she called out, Andy. He turned. She was silhouetted against those massive windows, Manhattan spreading behind her like a kingdom she built and populated with everything except what mattered. Your daughter, Clara said. The blueberry smiley face thing. That's good parenting. Don't stop doing that. Even when work makes it hard. Then the elevator doors closed, and Andy was descending from the penthouse, from that moment of connection, back to his real life where he was 23 minutes late and counting. He made it to his apartment in 18 minutes, breaking at least 4 traffic laws. Sophie was waiting on the front steps with Mrs. Chen, her backpack already on, her face arranged in that expression of elaborate disappointment that children wielded like weapons. You're late, she announced. I know, baby. I'm so sorry. Mrs. Chen says we can still make it if we run. Sophie grabbed his hand, and just like that, she forgave him the way kids did, completely, instantly, with a generosity adults forgot how to access. Come on, Daddy. I'll race you to the corner. They ran. Andy's dress shoes were not designed for sprinting, his wrinkled shirt was definitely going to raise questions from Mrs. Rodriguez, and his mind kept replaying Clara's face in that morning light, vulnerable and guarded and somehow both. But Sophie was laughing, her backpack bouncing, her hand tight in his, and for these 3 blocks, Andy Markson was exactly where he needed to be. He didn't know that Clara was watching the security footage from last night at that exact moment, her coffee going cold, her hands trembling as she watched Vance produce that syringe. He didn't know she was making a phone call that would change everything. And he definitely didn't know that when he got to the office later, his employee ID wouldn't work, his desk would be cleared, and Trevor would be waiting with a security escort and a severance package. Marcus Vance kept his promises. Andy had just been too busy being heroic to remember that powerful men don't forgive humiliation. Sophie hugged him goodbye at the school gates, completely unaware that her father's grand gesture had just cost him the job that paid for her blueberry breakfasts. Love you, Daddy. Don't be late tonight, okay? It's spaghetti night. I'll be there, Andy promised, watching her disappear into the building. Some promises, he was learning, were easier to make than keep. Chapter 5, Severance and Survival. The lobby of Perry Innovations felt different when you were being escorted out by security. Andy had walked through these doors 1,000 times, early mornings with coffee, late nights with exhaustion, endless afternoons of invisible competence. Now Trevor was at his elbow, not meeting his eyes, and the receptionist who usually smiled at him was suddenly fascinated by her computer screen. Trevor, come on. We've worked together for 3 years. It's not personal, man. Trevor's voice was low, apologetic. Orders came from the top. Vance made calls. HR got nervous. You know how it is. I know how it is when someone tries to drug our boss and I'm the one who gets fired. They were at his desk now, his former desk. Someone had already boxed his belongings, the framed photo of Sophie, the spare tie he kept for emergencies, 3 years of accumulated pens and post-it notes reduced to cardboard and tape. His employee ID badge sat on top like a bookmark marking the end of a chapter. The official reason is performance concerns and inappropriate conduct with a superior, Trevor said, handing him an envelope. Severance is inside. 3 months' salary. More than standard, apparently. Someone upstairs felt generous. Andy ripped open the envelope. The check was real, more money than he'd expected, actually. But 3 months wouldn't cover Sophie's school, wouldn't pay Mrs. Chen, wouldn't rebuild a career that had just been torched because he'd done the right thing. Did Clara, he caught himself. Did Ms. Perry sign off on this? Trevor's silence was answer enough. Right. Andy grabbed the box, his hands shaking with rage he couldn't afford to express. Tell her nothing. I'm nobody. Furniture, remember? He was halfway across the lobby when the elevator doors opened and Clara stepped out, flanked by her assistant and 2 executives Andy recognized from the Tokyo deal. She was in full Ice Queen mode, power suit, perfect hair, the kind of heels that said I will step on your throat if you're in my way. Their eyes met for exactly 2 seconds. Andy saw something flicker across her face, surprise, maybe guilt, before her expression smoothed into professional neutrality. She looked at the box in his arms, at Trevor standing guard, and she knew. Of course she knew. Nothing happened in her company without her knowledge. She kept walking. Didn't pause, didn't acknowledge, didn't do anything except prove that last night had been exactly what she'd said, a moment of weakness she'd already erased. Andy left Perry Innovations for the last time at 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, jobless, furious, and absolutely certain that heroism was a luxury only rich people could afford. The apartment felt smaller in daylight, or maybe Andy had just gotten used to seeing spaces that cost millions. He set the box on the kitchen table next to yesterday's breakfast dishes and pulled out his laptop. 3 months of severance meant 3 months to find something else, but who hired a logistics coordinator with a gap in employment and no reference from his most recent boss? His phone rang. Jennifer, his ex-wife. Perfect timing, as always. Let me guess, she said without preamble. You forgot about Sophie's parent-teacher conference tomorrow. Andy closed his eyes. He had absolutely forgotten about the parent-teacher conference. Jen, It's fine. I'll handle it. I always handle it. Her voice was tired, not angry. Somehow that was worse. Are you still planning on taking her this weekend, or should I make other plans? I'll take her. Of course I'll take her. With what money, Andy? Mrs. Chen texted me. You didn't come home last night. And don't lie to me about working late because your voice does that thing where it goes up at the end when she stopped. Wait. Where were you? Work emergency. My boss needed, it doesn't matter. I'm handling it. Your boss. Jennifer laughed, sharp and knowing. The Ice Queen billionaire you're always coordinating for. The one who doesn't know you exist. She knows I exist now. The words came out bitter. I'm unemployed because of it. Silence. Then, Andy, what did you do? He told her. Maybe because she was the only person who'd known him before he became a single father scrambling to prove he could do it all. Maybe because she'd understand better than anyone the calculus of sacrifice, having left him because he'd failed at it so spectacularly their first time around. When he finished, Jennifer sighed. So you saved a billionaire from being assaulted and got fired for your trouble. That's very you. Heroic and stupid in equal measure. Thanks for the support. I'm being serious. Her voice softened. You did the right thing. You also destroyed your career. Both things can be true, Andy. The world doesn't care about your good intentions. Especially not Manhattan. So what do I do? You find another job. You keep showing up for Sophie. You stop trying to save people who have entire legal teams to save themselves. She paused. And maybe you let me help Sophie for a few weeks. Not forever. Just until you're stable. The offer landed like a punch. Jennifer taking Sophie, even temporarily, meant admitting he'd failed. Again. That the custody arrangement they'd fought over for 6 months was exactly what she predicted, unsustainable for a single father who couldn't say no to other people's emergencies. I can handle my daughter, Jen. I know you can. I'm saying you don't have to handle everything alone. Her voice cracked slightly. I'm not the enemy, Andy. I'm Sophie's mother. Let me be that. He wanted to argue. Pride demanded it. But he was looking at the box from his desk, at the framed photo of Sophie, at the reality that 3 months of severance divided by Manhattan rent left very little room for error. I'll think about it, he said quietly. After they hung up, Andy sat in the silent apartment and did what he'd been avoiding. He opened his laptop and started job hunting. Every search ended the same way, application forms asking for current employer, reason for leaving, references. How did you explain that you'd been fired for stopping a crime? That your reward for heroism was a severance check and a ruined reputation? His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Unknown, Mr. Markson, this is Raymond from the Apex. Ms. Perry left something for you at the front desk. She said it was urgent. Andy stared at the message. Then he typed back, tell Ms. Perry I'm not her employee anymore. She can keep whatever it is. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Raymond, she said you'd say that. She also said to tell you, some debts aren't about money. Andy shouldn't have gone. He should have ignored the message, blocked the number, moved on with the dignity of someone who'd been professionally executed. Instead, he found himself on the M train heading back to West 57th, his curiosity overriding his common sense the way it always did. Raymond was waiting in the Apex's lobby with an envelope. Not a severance check envelope, something heavier, more official. She left this an hour ago, Raymond said, handing it over. Said if you came, I should tell you she's sorry. Those were her exact words. Tell him I'm sorry. The envelope wasn't sealed. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten note on stationery so expensive it practically crackled with wealth. Andy. The footage from the parking garage is on this drive. Raw, unedited, with audio. I didn't delete it. I'm not that person, no matter what you think. You were right. About reporting it. About everything. But you were also right that I'm a coward who chooses her empire over doing the right thing. I can't give you back your job, Vance's people made sure of that. But I can give you this. Use it however you want. Police report. Lawsuit. Leak it to the press. Your choice, not mine. Also, I called your ex-wife's law firm. They're hiring an operations manager. I may have made a call suggesting they interview you. The salary is better than what I paid you, which is an embarrassment I'm trying to correct. You asked me once what kind of monster chooses boardrooms over bedtime stories. The answer is, the kind who's terrified of being human. You're not that kind. Don't become it. See. Andy read the note 3 times, standing in a lobby designed to make ordinary people feel small. Then he looked at Raymond, who was carefully studying the expensive art on the walls. She's upstairs right now? Andy asked. Video conference with Tokyo. It has been all day. Raymond's expression was carefully neutral. But I'm sure if someone wanted to wait, the penthouse elevator is right there. Not that I'm suggesting anything. Andy looked at the flash drive in his hand. At the note that proved Clara Perry was capable of apology, of moral courage, of being something more than the Ice Queen. He thought about Marcus Vance walking free. About justice being a luxury commodity. About the choice between revenge and redemption. What would you do with evidence that could destroy a powerful man, use it to seek justice, or let it go and move forward? Drop your thoughts below. Then he thought about Sophie, waiting for spaghetti night. About the job interview Clara had arranged. About the fact that holding on to anger was easy, but building a new life required both hands free. He pocketed the flash drive and headed back to the street. Some debts, Clara had said, weren't about money. Some choices Andy was learning weren't about revenge. Behind him, in a penthouse 43 floors up, Clara Perry watched him leave on the security monitors, and for the first time in 4 years, she cried for someone other than herself. The law firm of Hartman and Associates occupied 3 floors of a midtown building that smelled like old money and new ambition. Andy sat in the waiting area wearing his best suit, the one he saved for Sophie's school events, trying not to calculate how many qualified candidates were probably competing for the same operations manager position. His phone buzzed. Sophie, texting during lunch break, "Daddy, did you get a new job yet?" Kayla's dad says PPL who lose jobs are lazy, but I said you are not lazy, you are a hero, and she said heroes don't get fired, and I said some do, and Mrs. Rodriguez made us both apologize. Andy typed back, "You don't have to defend me, baby. And tell Kayla's dad to mind his business. Can't say that it's rude." Then think it very loudly in his direction. LOL okay. Love you, Daddy. Get the job. He pocketed his phone just as a woman emerged from the conference room, mid-40s, sharp-eyed, wearing the kind of designer suit that said, "I win cases before lunch." "Mr. Markson. I'm Patricia Hartman, senior partner. Thanks for coming in." Her handshake was firm, assessing. "Clara Perry speaks very highly of your logistics work." Andy followed her into a conference room with windows overlooking the city. 2 other people were already seated, a younger man who looked fresh out of an MBA program, and a woman with graying hair and kind eyes who introduced herself as the firm's COO. "So," Patricia began, folding her hands on the table. "Let's address the elephant in the room. You were terminated from Perry Innovations yesterday after 3 years of exemplary service. Want to tell us what happened?" This was it. The moment where Andy could either lie, spin some corporate fiction about seeking new opportunities, or tell the truth and watch another door close. He chose the truth. Mostly because he was tired of fiction. "I stopped a colleague from assaulting Ms. Perry at a company event. He had connections. I didn't." The math was pretty simple after that. The MBA guy's eyebrows shot up. The COO leaned forward slightly. Patricia's expression didn't change at all, which somehow felt more significant. "Marcus Vance," Patricia said. "Not a question. Hedge fund manager, extensive legal team, reputation for making problems disappear. You know him. I've deposed him twice. Brilliant financier. Absolute predator." Patricia's smile was sharp as a knife. "And you intervened." "I did my job. The job of being a decent human being, not just a logistics coordinator." The room went quiet. Andy could hear the clock on the wall ticking, each second another opportunity to have said something smarter, more diplomatic, more likely to get him hired. Then Patricia laughed. Actually laughed, startling everyone including herself. "You know what I love about this? You torpedoed your career for a woman who probably makes in a day what you make in a year, and you're sitting here acting like it was the only possible choice." She leaned back, studying him. Most people would have walked away. Keep their heads down. Preserve their livelihoods. "I have a 7-year-old daughter who thinks I'm a hero," Andy said quietly. "I'd rather be unemployed than prove her wrong." The COO smiled. The MBA guy looked uncomfortable, like he'd just realized he was competing against someone playing an entirely different game. Patricia pulled out a folder. "Your resume says you managed international logistics for Perry Innovations, coordinating private jets, conference scheduling, vendor relations across 15 countries. That's basically air traffic control for a billionaire's life. That's one way to describe it. Our firm has 43 attorneys, 6 paralegals, and a receptionist who's been here since 1987 and runs this place like a military operation. We need someone who can coordinate trials across multiple jurisdictions, manage travel for depositions, handle vendor relations for everything from court reporters to expert witnesses. It's chaos wrapped in legal jargon and billed in 6-minute increments. Sounds familiar, Andy said. Except the billionaire threw things when she was angry. Do your attorneys throw things? Only files. Occasionally staplers. Patricia's smile turned genuine. The salary is $95,000 base, plus benefits and performance bonuses. You'd start Monday if you want it. Andy blinked. $95,000 was $20,000 more than Perry Innovations had paid him. It was Sophie's school tuition covered without overtime. It was Mrs. Chen paid without anxiety. It was a breathing room he hadn't had in years. Why? He asked. Clara made a call, sure, but you don't hire someone just because a client asks. We don't, Patricia agreed. We hire people who make hard choices and live with the consequences. People who understand that doing the right thing often costs more than doing the easy thing. In law, that's not optional, it's the entire point. She slid a contract across the table. So, do you want the job, Mr. Markson, or do you want to keep punishing yourself for being heroic? Andy looked at the contract. At the salary number that would change everything. At the chance to rebuild after watching his good deed implode his life. He thought about Clara's note, don't become the kind of person who's terrified of being human. He thought about Sophie, you are not lazy, you are a hero. He signed. Andy called Sophie from the street outside, the afternoon sun turning Manhattan gold and possible. Baby, guess what? You got it. She was screaming loud enough that Mrs. Chen probably heard her 3 blocks away. I knew it. I told Kayla you'd get it. Daddy, can we celebrate? Can we get ice cream? The fancy kind with the cookie dough chunks. We can get whatever kind you want, Andy laughed, his chest finally loosening after 2 days of pressure. How about I pick you up from school and we go to Central Park? Make a whole afternoon of it? Yes. Wait, her voice turned suspicious. You promise you'll be there at 3:15? Not 3:30 or 4 o'clock or 5 minutes, sweetie, which actually means 20 minutes. I promise. Cross my heart. Okay, but if you're late I'm ordering 2 ice creams and you have to pay for both. Deal. He hung up feeling lighter than he had in months. New job. Stability. Sophie's faith in him was restored. Maybe heroism didn't always destroy everything. Maybe sometimes. His phone rang again. Unknown number. Again. He almost didn't answer. But something made him press accept. Mr. Markson. The voice was smooth, cultured, and laced with threat. Marcus Vance. Congratulations on the new position. Hartman and Associates. Very respectable firm. Patricia's quite the ball-buster, or so I hear. Andy stopped walking. People flowed around him on the sidewalk like water around a stone. How did you get this number? Please. I have people who find things. Numbers, addresses, custody arrangements. Vance let that last part hang. Your daughter Sophie goes to Riverside Elementary, doesn't she? Such a good school. Great security. Usually. The threat was crystal clear, wrapped in corporate courtesy. Andy's hand tightened on the phone until his knuckles went white. You stay away from my daughter. I don't want anything to do with your daughter, Markson. I want you to understand something, there are consequences for humiliation. You made me look foolish in front of Clara Perry. You cost me an opportunity I'd been cultivating for months. That has value. And the value must be recouped. I have footage, Andy said, his voice deadly quiet. Security cameras. Audio. Everything you tried to do. One email to the NYPD and you're done. Vance laughed. Do you really think I don't know about that footage? Clara's already shown it to her lawyers. They've explained exactly what a defense attorney would do with it, discredit the timeline, question the context, paint me as a concerned colleague helping an intoxicated woman. You think you're the first person to try threatening me with evidence? I have 5 lawyers whose entire job is turning evidence into reasonable doubt. Then what do you want? I want you to remember your place. Vance's voice went cold. You're a logistics coordinator who got lucky with a job interview. That's all. Stay in your lane. Don't become Clara Perry's pet project. Don't think saving her once makes you special. And definitely don't think that flash drive in your pocket makes you dangerous. The line went dead. Andy stood on a midtown sidewalk, the sun still shining, the job offer still real, everything still possible. Except now there was a shadow over all of it, a reminder that powerful men didn't forget, and justice was just another commodity they could afford to buy. He thought about the flash drive. About making copies, going to the police, doing the right thing again. Then he thought about Sophie at Riverside Elementary with its great security, that apparently wasn't great enough to stop a man with resources and motivation. Some battles, Andy realized, you won by fighting. Others you won by surviving long enough to fight smarter. He headed toward the subway, toward Sophie, toward an ice cream celebration that felt smaller now but still worth having. Behind him, Manhattan glittered like it always did, beautiful and brutal and utterly indifferent to who deserved what. In her penthouse, Clara Perry was reading the same threat Vance had sent to her lawyers, the one promising to destroy anyone who moved against him. She looked at her phone, at Andy's contact information, at the choice between protecting him and protecting herself. Then she made a call that would turn protection into something far more complicated. Raymond, she said. I need you to do something. And it needs to be completely off the record. Sophie got her ice cream with extra cookie dough chunks, and Andy got 20 minutes of watching his daughter be happy, 20 minutes where Marcus Vance's threat was just background noise instead of a siren. They sat on a park bench overlooking the lake, Sophie chattering about her day, about how Kayla had apologized, about how Mrs. Rodriguez said they were learning fractions next week and she was scared because fractions sound like something breaking, Daddy. Fractions are just parts of a whole, Andy explained, dividing his own ice cream with a plastic spoon. See? This is one half. This is another half. Together they make one complete thing. But what if the halves don't fit back together? Sophie asked with the devastating logic of 7-year-olds. What if they break too much? Andy thought about his life, the divorce, the job loss, the threat hanging over everything. Then you make something new with the pieces you have. Sophie considered this while licking her spoon. Is that what you did? With me and Mommy? Made something new? Yeah, baby. We made you. And you're the best thing either of us ever did. She smiled, satisfied, and went back to her ice cream. Andy pulled her close, breathing in her strawberry shampoo, trying to memorize this moment before the world got complicated again. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, meeting. Tonight. 8 p.m. The Apex lobby. Come alone. See. Sophie noticed him tense. Is that work? Yeah. Just, logistics. You're really good at logistics, Daddy. That's why you got the new job. She said it with such absolute faith that Andy wanted to preserve it in amber, protect it from every truth that might tarnish it. I love you, sophomore. You know that, right? I know, Daddy. You tell me like 1,000,000 times a day. She grinned. It's kind of annoying but also nice. They finished their ice cream as the sun set over Central Park, turning the lake into liquid gold. Andy walked Sophie home to Jennifer's apartment, part of the custody arrangement that felt more complicated after his conversation with his ex-wife. Jennifer answered the door in yoga pants and a strained smile. "Hey, sophomore. Go wash up for dinner, okay?" Sophie hugged Andy's legs and disappeared inside. Jennifer stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind her. "She seems happy," Jennifer observed. "You told her about the job?" "I did. 95,000, full benefits, starts Monday." "That's great, Andy." "Really?" She meant it, but there was something else behind her eyes. "I got a call today. From a lawyer. Not my firm, someone else. They were asking questions about our custody arrangement, about Sophie's school, about your ability to provide stable childcare." Andy's blood went cold. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that happens before someone files for a custody review. They were fishing, seeing if there was anything they could use to argue you're an unfit guardian." Jennifer's expression was careful. "Andy, what's going on? Who did you piss off?" He couldn't tell her about Vance. Couldn't explain that saving his boss had put their daughter in the crosshairs of a man who viewed revenge as a business expense. "It's handled. Work politics. Nothing to worry about. Don't lie to me." Jennifer's voice went sharp. "Sophie is my daughter too. If someone's threatening our custody arrangement, I have a right to know. I'm protecting her. By keeping secrets. That's what you always do, Andy. You decide what I can handle, what I should know, and then you're shocked when it all blows up because you tried to manage everything alone." She crossed her arms. "I'm not the enemy. But I will become one if you put Sophie at risk because of your hero complex." The words hit like punches, all the more brutal because they were true. Andy had spent 3 years proving he could be Sophie's father without Jennifer's help, and now that independence was being weaponized by a man with infinite resources and zero conscience. "I'll fix it," Andy said quietly. "How?" "I don't know yet. But I will." Jennifer studied him, seeing all the ways he was breaking and pretending he wasn't. "The offer still stands. Sophie can stay with me full-time until this blows over. Not forever. Just until you're stable. Safe. Less of a liability." Andy's laugh was bitter. "I'm her father, Jen. I don't get to tap out when things get hard." "Neither do I," she said softly. "That's my point." They stared at each other in the hallway, two people who'd once loved each other enough to create Sophie and now couldn't agree on how to protect her. Finally, Jennifer sighed. "Just, be careful. Whatever this is." "I will." He left before she could see him shaking. The Apex lobby at 8 p.m. was emptier than during the day, the after-work crowd already home, the nightlife crowd not yet emerged. Raymond nodded at Andy from his post, his expression professionally neutral but his eyes sympathetic. The man had probably seen every flavor of Manhattan drama play out in this lobby. Clara was waiting by the elevators, not in her usual power suit but in jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Andy's new monthly salary. She looked younger, more vulnerable, the woman from that night in the parking garage instead of the ice queen from the boardroom. "You came," she said. "Your text said it was urgent. Was that another lie, or are we being honest now?" Clara flinched. "I deserved that. Can we talk?" "Upstairs." "Last time I went upstairs, I woke up unemployed. Last time you went upstairs, you saved my life." Clara's voice cracked slightly. "Andy, please. I need to explain." Against his better judgment, a pattern that was becoming worryingly familiar, Andy followed her into the elevator. The ride up was silent, tension thick enough to cut. When the doors opened to the penthouse, Andy noticed details he'd missed before, the lack of personal photos, the pristine kitchen that clearly never got used, the way the entire space felt like a museum dedicated to success rather than a home where someone actually lived. Clara poured 2 glasses of water, her hands trembling slightly. I know about Vance's call. About the lawyers sniffing around your custody arrangement. How? Because I hired a private investigator to watch him. After what he tried to do, I needed to know what he was planning. She handed Andy a folder. He's been busy. Talking to Jennifer's law firm colleagues, trying to dig up anything he could use against you. He's also been spreading rumors at Perry Innovations that you stole company property before you were fired. Andy opened the folder. Photos of Vance meeting with various people, transcripts of conversations obtained through methods Andy probably didn't want to know about, a paper trail of intimidation and manipulation. Why are you showing me this? Because I'm trying to fix what I broke. Clara sat across from him, her composure crumbling. I should have protected you. Should have stood up to Vance immediately, consequences be damned. Instead, I let them fire you to protect my company's reputation. I chose the empire over doing right by the one person who did right by me. You got me a job interview. I threw you a bone and called it redemption. Her voice was raw. Andy, you don't understand. I'm not good at this. At being human, at caring about people, at putting anything before my company. I haven't been good at it since Naomi's father took her and proved I was exactly what everyone said, cold, ambitious, incapable of putting anyone first. So you're what? Trying to practice humanity on me? Andy stood, anger finally breaking through. I'm not your redemption project, Clara. I'm a single father who did the right thing and got destroyed for it. Your guilt doesn't change that. I know. Tears were sliding down her face now, ruining her carefully maintained composure. I know I can't fix this. But I can help you fight back. Vance thinks he's untouchable. We can prove he's not. We. Andy laughed bitterly. There is no we. You're a billionaire who plays in a different world. I'm a guy trying to keep custody of his daughter. Our problems aren't the same. They are now. Clara pulled out her phone, showed him an email. Vance sent this an hour ago. He's threatening to leak stories about you and me, fabricated stories about an inappropriate relationship between boss and employee. Claims you've been extorting me, that the job at Hartman's was payoff for keeping quiet about an affair. Andy read the email, watching his reputation get shredded in real time. He's insane. He's thorough. And he's betting that you'll back down because you have more to lose than he does. Clara stood, moving closer. But what if we called his bluff? What if we went public with the real story, what he tried to do, the footage, everything? He'll destroy me in court. You said it yourself, he has lawyers who specialize in making evidence meaningless. He has lawyers. I have resources. Clara's eyes were fierce now, the Ice Queen emerging in defense of something other than her empire. And I have something he doesn't, a conscience that won't let me watch him hurt you for saving my life. Andy wanted to say yes. Wanted to believe that Clara Perry giving a damn about his life could actually change the odds. But he'd been heroic once already, and it had cost him everything. I can't risk Sophie, he said quietly. If this goes public, Vance goes after my custody. Jennifer's already worried I'm an unfit parent. One scandal, one tabloid story about me and my billionaire boss, and I lost my daughter. So we let him win. Let me survive. Andy moved toward the elevator. Thank you for the warning. For the folder. For caring, if that's what this is. But I'm done being the person who does the right thing at any cost. The cost is too high. Andy, wait. He turned at the elevator doors. You asked me once what kind of monster chooses their empire over their family. I'm choosing my daughter over justice. Does that make me a monster too? It makes you a father, Clara whispered. It makes you better than me. The elevator doors closed on her face, on the penthouse full of everything except what mattered, on the possibility of something that could never work between two people in different tax brackets. Andy rode down 43 floors, the folder heavy in his hands, the choice heavy in his chest. When he emerged into the lobby, Raymond was there with an envelope. "She asked me to give you this if you left," Raymond said. "And to tell you she understands." Inside was a check. Not for 3 months' salary. For enough to cover Sophie's school for 3 years, Mrs. Chen's wages for 2, and enough left over that Andy could afford to fight for custody if it came to that. The note attached was simple: "This isn't guilt money. It's an investment in a good man raising a good kid. Use it. Please. See." Andy stood in the lobby, holding a check that would solve all his immediate problems, knowing it came from a woman who just offered to go to war for him and been turned away because he was too scared to fight. Heroism, he realized, wasn't always about doing the right thing. Sometimes it was about choosing which right thing you could actually survive doing. He pocketed the check and headed home to Sophie, to safety, to the small life he was trying to protect. Behind him, in a penthouse filled with expensive emptiness, Clara Perry made a decision that would prove Andy wrong about one critical thing: billionaires who cared were far more dangerous than billionaires who didn't. She picked up her phone and dialed. "Marcus Vance. This is Clara Perry. Let's talk about what happens when you threaten people I care about." Chapter 8, The War Room. Andy didn't sleep that night. He sat at his kitchen table with Clara's check in front of him, doing math that never quite added up. The money was real. Life-changing. But accepting it meant acknowledging that Clara Perry cared enough to write it, and caring led to complications he couldn't afford. At 2:37 a.m., his phone lit up. Not a call, a news alert. Breaking: Billionaire Clara Perry files restraining order against hedge fund manager Marcus Vance. Andy's heart stopped. He clicked the article, watching his careful retreat explode into public warfare. Perry Innovations CEO Clara Perry filed an emergency restraining order this evening against Marcus Vance, citing credible threats and an alleged assault attempt at a recent corporate event. Security footage submitted to Manhattan police reportedly shows Vance in possession of an unidentified substance. Vance's attorneys call the allegations baseless character assassination. Developing story. His phone rang immediately. "Clara. What did you do?" Andy's voice was hoarse. "I told you I couldn't fight this. So I'm fighting it." Clara sounded wired, manic, like she'd mainlined espresso and rage. "I called his bluff. Submitted the footage to NYPD, filed for a restraining order, and leaked the whole thing to 3 business reporters who've been waiting years to nail Vance for something. Clara, he's going to destroy both of us. He's going to try. There's a difference." Papers rustled on her end. "I've spent 4 years being careful. Being strategic. Protecting my empire at the expense of everything else. And where did it get me? Alone in a penthouse, estranged from my daughter, watching good people get hurt because I was too afraid to use my power for anything except making money. This isn't about me. It's absolutely about you." Her voice cracked. "You risked everything to protect me. The least I can do is return the favor." Besides, a bitter laugh. "Turns out when you're a billionaire, people actually listen when you accuse someone of assault. Privilege isn't just for making money. It's for making things right." Andy heard something in her voice, not just determination but liberation. Like she'd been waiting years for permission to stop being the Ice Queen and had finally given it to herself. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "Now. We go to war. Properly this time." She took a breath. "I need you to come to Perry Innovations tomorrow. 9 a.m. There are people you need to meet." "Clara, I was fired. By HR under duress. I'm the CEO. I'm unfiring you. Temporarily. As a consultant on a very specific project." Her tone shifted, became almost playful. "Unless you'd rather I fight this alone. Because I will. But I'm better with a partner." Andy looked at the check on his table. At Sophie's school photo on the fridge. At the choice between safety and standing beside a woman who'd finally decided to stand up. Jennifer's going to kill me, he muttered. Jennifer's a family law attorney. I'll hire her firm for the custody protection. Vance won't touch Sophie, I'll make sure of it. You can't promise that. I can't. But I can make it so expensive and public that he'd be insane to try. Clara's voice softened. Andy, I know I've given you no reason to trust me. But I'm asking anyway. Help me do this right. Against every instinct for self-preservation, Andy heard himself say, 9 a.m. I'll be there. Thank you. A pause. And Andy? Cash that check. It's not charity. It's 3 years of underpaying you that I'm correcting. She hung up before he could argue. Perry Innovations at 9 a.m. felt like walking into an alternate universe. Trevor was waiting in the lobby, not with a security escort but with an apologetic handshake. Man, I'm sorry about the other day. Orders are orders, but still. That was messed up. He handed Andy a visitor's badge. Ms. Perry's waiting in the executive conference room. Fair warning, she's terrifying when she's on a mission. The executive conference room was glass and steel and occupied by 5 people Andy had never seen before, 3 lawyers, a crisis management consultant, and a private investigator who looked like she could kill someone with a rolled-up newspaper. Clara stood at the head of the table in full Ice Queen mode, power suit, perfect hair, the kind of focused intensity that made billion-dollar mergers happen. When Andy entered, something flickered across her face. Relief, maybe. Or vindication that he'd actually shown up. Everyone, this is Andy Markson. He's the reason we're here. Clara gestured to the assembled team. Andy, this is the war room. These people specialize in taking down men who think they're untouchable. The lead attorney, a woman named Diane Chen who looked like she litigated for sport, pulled up a presentation. Mr. Markson, Ms. Perry has briefed us on the parking garage incident. We've reviewed the security footage, documented Vance's subsequent threats, and compiled a file on his history that makes for very ugly reading. The screen filled with documents, 3 previous assault allegations that had been settled quietly, a pattern of predatory behavior at corporate events, NDAs with financial teeth, and a network of enablers who'd helped bury everything. He's done this before, Andy said, his stomach turning. 11 times that we can prove, the private investigator, Katrina Moss, said flatly. 4 resulted in settlements. 7 were scared into silence. You and Ms. Perry are the first to push back with resources and documentation. Which is why this matters, Clara said, moving to stand beside the screen. Vance thinks power insulates him. We're going to prove it doesn't. But, she looked directly at Andy. This only works if we're both willing to go public. Press conferences, depositions, the whole circus. And that means your life becomes very visible very quickly. Andy thought about Sophie. About Jennifer's warnings. About the quiet life he'd been trying to protect. What about my daughter, he asked. Vance already threatened custody. Which is why Jennifer Markson's firm is now on retainer, Diane interrupted, sliding a contract across the table. Ms. Perry hired them this morning. Specifically to create a legal shield around your custody arrangement. Any attempt by Vance to interfere gets met with immediate counteraction. Andy stared at the contract. At Clara, who'd apparently spent the night not just declaring war but building fortifications. You did all this in 8 hours. I did all this in 4. The other 4 I spent answering calls from board members having heart attacks. Clara's smile was sharp. Turns out when you spend a decade building a reputation for being untouchable, people get very nervous when you suddenly start caring about things like justice and doing the right thing. Your board is worried. My board can be replaced. She said it with the casual finality of someone who owned enough shares to make it true. I'm tired of pretending to be something I'm not. Naomi turned 7 in 3 weeks. I've missed 4 birthdays because I was too afraid to be human. I'm done being afraid. The room went quiet. Andy saw it then, the real reason Clara was doing this. Not just for him. Not even primarily for him. She was doing it for herself. For Naomi. For every version of herself she'd buried under ambition and fear. If we do this, Andy said slowly, Vance will come at us with everything. Our lives will be dissected. Every mistake, every weakness. Every truth, Clara finished. Yeah. Terrifying, isn't it? Being human in public. Andy looked around the war room. The lawyers are ready to fight. The investigators are ready to dig. Clara Perry, billionaire CEO, finally using her power for something beyond her empire. He thought about what he'd tell Sophie when she asked why Daddy was on the news. About explaining that sometimes heroes don't win by staying quiet, they win by making so much noise that silence becomes impossible. Okay, Andy said. Let's do it. But I have conditions. Clara raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Sophie stays protected. Completely. If Vance even looks at her school. Already handled. Private security, discreet but effective. And when this is over, if we win, I want you to call your ex-husband. Set up a meeting with Naomi. No more missed birthdays. Clara's composure cracked. Tears welled up, quickly blinked away. That's your condition. Will I reconcile with my daughter? That's my condition. Because this whole thing, Andy gestured at the war room, at the lawyers and the fight ahead, it's only worth it if we both come out the other side more human than we went in. Diane cleared her throat. That's very touching, but can we focus on the legal strategy? The restraining order hearing is in 3 days. We need to prepare testimony, anticipate Vance's defense. Actually, Katrina interrupted, pulling out her phone, we might need to accelerate everything. Vance just posted on social media. She turned her screen around. Marcus Vance's verified account, posted 15 minutes ago. Disappointed to address false allegations from Clara Perry. This appears to be a coordinated attack after I declined to invest in her failing ventures. More details forthcoming from my legal team. Truth will prevail. Hashtag false accusations, hashtag cancel culture. The post already had 10,000 likes and hundreds of comments calling Clara everything from bitter to significantly worse. He's framing this as revenge for a business rejection, Diane said, her jaw tight. Classic Darvo, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. So we show the footage, Andy said. Let people see what actually happened. If we release it now, we lose control of the narrative, Clara said. Better to. Her phone exploded with notifications. Then Andy's. Then everyone's. Someone had leaked the security footage. Raw, unedited, crystal clear. Marcus Vance producing a syringe. Clara stumbles. Andy intervenes. The whole thing, posted anonymously to 3 major news sites simultaneously. Who, Clara started. Raymond's text appeared on Andy's phone, thought you might need this to go public. Sorry for not asking permission. Some battles require a first strike. R. The doorman. The invisible man who saw everything. Had apparently decided that watching quietly wasn't enough anymore. Within minutes, Vance's post was buried under a tidal wave of the actual footage. Within an hour, hashtag Believe Survivors was trending alongside very detailed discussions of what exactly Vance had been holding in that parking garage. Diane was on her phone, barking orders. Katrina was monitoring social media, watching the narrative shift in real time. The other lawyers were already drafting statements. Andy and Clara stood at the window, watching Manhattan wake up to a story that would dominate news cycles for weeks. Still think this was a good idea? Clara asked quietly. Ask me when it's over. What if we lose? Andy looked at her, this woman who'd spent a decade building walls and was now tearing them down in the most public way possible. Then we lose fighting. That's better than winning by staying silent. Clara's hand found his on the window ledge. Just for a moment. Just long enough to acknowledge what they both knew, some battles you fought alone, and some you fought together, and the second kind mattered more even when they cost everything. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen and her face went pale. It's Naomi's father, she whispered. He never calls unless. Answer it, Andy said. Clara took a breath and accepted the call. Hello, James. Whatever James said made her sit down abruptly, tears streaming down her face. When she hung up 3 minutes later, she was shaking. He saw the news, she said. The footage. Everything. And he said, her voice broke. He said Naomi's been asking about me. That maybe we could arrange a visit. If I wanted. Andy crouched beside her chair. Do you want to? I'm terrified, Clara admitted. What if she doesn't remember me? What if she hates me for leaving? Then you'll start rebuilding. One day at a time. Like we're doing with this. He gestured at the war room, at the battle they just made inevitable. You said you were done being afraid. Clara wiped her eyes, composure returning in fragments. I did say that, didn't I? You did. And I believed you. She stood, squaring her shoulders, the Ice Queen and the human woman finally existing in the same space without contradiction. Okay. Let's win this thing. For Naomi. For Sophie. For every person Vance has silenced. Diane looked up from her phone. Press conference in 2 hours. Both of you. Are we ready? Andy thought about Sophie, about the new job starting Monday, about every reason this was insane. Then he thought about what he'd tell his daughter when she asked if he'd fought back. We're ready, he said. And for the first time since that night in the parking garage, he actually believed it. Chapter 9, When Heroes Come Home. The press conference was a battlefield dressed in business casual. Andy stood beside Clara at a podium emblazoned with the Perry Innovations logo, facing 40 reporters and twice as many cameras. His hands were shaking. Hers were steady, 3 years of boardroom performances finally being used for something real. Clara spoke first. Calm. Clear. Devastating. She detailed the parking garage, the syringe, Andy's intervention. She named Marcus Vance's pattern of predation, the 11 other women, the system that had protected him. She didn't cry. Didn't perform vulnerability for sympathy. She just told the truth like it was a quarterly earnings report, factual, documented, irrefutable. When the reporters erupted with questions, Andy stepped forward. I'm a single father, he said, his voice carrying over the chaos. I make decent money. I'm nobody special. But that night, I had a choice, walk away or help someone in trouble. I helped. And a powerful man tried to destroy my life for it. He looked directly at the cameras. If you're watching this, Marcus Vance, here's what you need to understand, you picked the wrong person to intimidate. Because I've got nothing left to lose except my dignity, and that's the one thing you can't buy. The room exploded. Questions, camera flashes, the machinery of public opinion grinding into motion. Diane fielded the legal questions. Katrina provided documentation. Clara and Andy stood together, employer and employee, billionaire and working dad, two people who'd accidentally become allies in a fight neither had wanted but both refused to abandon. Afterward, in the quiet of Clara's office, they watched the news coverage. Every network led with the story. Vance's firm had dropped him. 3 corporate boards had announced indefinite leave. His social media was a graveyard of deleted posts and furious comments. We won, Clara said, sounding surprised. We survived, Andy corrected. That's different. His phone rang. Jennifer. I just watched you on CNN, she said without preamble. You're either the bravest person I know or the most reckless. Can't it be both? Andy, Sophie saw it. She's been running around telling everyone her daddy fought a bad guy on TV. Jennifer's voice softened. She's proud of you. So am I. Even though you gave me 17 heart attacks in the process. I'm sorry. Don't be. Just. Come get your daughter. She wants to celebrate with her hero. Andy left Perry Innovations with Clara's handshake and a promise to have coffee when the dust settled. He picked up Sophie from Jennifer's, and she launched herself at him like he'd been gone for years instead of hours. Daddy. You were on TV. You stopped a bad man. She was bouncing, electric with pride. Mrs. Chen says you're a real hero now. Not just pretend. I was always real, baby. Just not on TV. They went to Central Park. Got ice cream. Threw rocks in the lake. Sophie talked non-stop about how she told her entire class, how even Kayla admitted it was cool, how Mrs. Rodriguez said they'd discuss current events and standing up for what's right in social studies. As the sun set, Sophie got quiet. Daddy? Are you going to be okay now? Like, really okay? Andy pulled her close. Yeah, baby. I'm going to be really okay. New job. New start. And I've got you. That's all the okay I need. And Ms. Perry? Is she okay too? Andy thought about Clara, about the call she was probably making right now to her ex-husband, arranging to see Naomi for the first time in 4 years. About the empire she'd risked to do the right thing. About the human woman she'd finally allowed herself to become. Yeah, he said. I think she's going to be okay too. 3 weeks later. Andy was settling into his office at Hartman and Associates, actual office, with a door and everything, when his phone buzzed. A photo from Clara, her and a little girl with her eyes, both of them smiling awkwardly but genuinely at a playground. First visit. She remembered me. We have a long way to go, but we're trying. Thank you for pushing me to be brave. See. Andy smiled and texted back, that's all any of us can do. Try. Be brave. Show up. Sophie burst into his office. She'd convinced Jennifer to let her visit after school, carrying a drawing. 2 stick figures, one tall and one small, with "My Hero Daddy" written in crayon across the top. For your new office, she announced. So everyone knows. Andy hung it next to his degrees, right where clients would see it. Because some achievements mattered more than credentials. That evening, the news reported Marcus Vance's arrest on multiple assault charges. 3 more women had come forward. The system that had protected him was finally, slowly, dismantling itself. Andy made spaghetti for Sophie, their Tuesday tradition, reclaimed. She chattered about fractions and recess and how she'd decided she wanted to be either a superhero or a lawyer when she grew up, because both help people who need it. After she fell asleep, Andy sat on his second-hand couch in his modest apartment and realized something. He'd lost a job, gained a better one, fought a billionaire's battle, and somehow ended up exactly where he needed to be. Not in a penthouse. Not in an empire. But in a small life filled with his daughter's laughter, honest work, and the knowledge that when the moment came, he'd chosen courage over comfort. Heroes, it turned out, didn't need to be extraordinary. They just needed to show up when it mattered and refuse to look away when everyone else did. Andy Markson had done that. And in doing so, he'd saved more than just his boss, he'd saved himself. The end. What does true heroism look like in your life? Have you ever had to choose between safety and doing what's right? Share your story in the comments below. Your courage might inspire someone else to take that first brave step.